I was expecting to find exactly what I thought was out there, a strong difference between people of my age group, my generation, and people of older generations. I thought that if I asked them the same questions, I was going to get very different answers. So I set out with my camera and I found someone my age who was married. Her name was Alexandria, and I interviewed her and I got a ton of information from her about what it was like to be married in our generation at our age. And then the next day, I went and I interviewed Jean. I set out on this project expecting to see a sharp contrast between millennials who were very interested in their careers and then older people who were going to be more interested in maybe things like having a family and being a housewife, because I think that's the stereotype that is often in place surrounding older people. And what I found was very different. And part of that's just because Jean is a fantastic woman. She was obviously not going to let any sort of societal pressure to be the perfect housewife hold her back from doing what she wanted to do. And that's why she was incredibly successful at being the first woman to do a whole bunch of things. She tells a funny story about when she first was married to Cliff. He gave her a book called The Navy Wife. And as Cliff jokingly puts it, he thinks that that book probably ended or ruined more Navy marriages than anything else, because it's all about how to be the perfect little cartoon caricature of a housewife. And needless to say, Jean threw that right away. And she decided to be a much stronger, more independent person than was maybe typical of her era. So instead of two very different views on marriage, I ended up with one that was right in the middle. And not only that, I interviewed them back to back and found that they were incredibly similar. These two women who I had chosen to juxtapose against each other turned out to have very similar life stories and very similar experiences. I also found that neither one of them was as kind of philosophical and nostalgic about the way that they talked about these sorts of things. They were very pragmatic, very hands-on. Jean herself says that she's much more of a doer. She's not as much into English and philosophy as she is into how do I do this thing? How do I make things better?